My name is Janice Jang, and Pete Leach and I host or coordinate around the world. And today we have, as if you don't know her, Joyce Ono, our wonderful friend, and Emma Cox, her sidekick for some of these trips.
It's the other way around.
And together.
Both accomplished artists who traveled to the Amazon and Galapagos, and they've returned to share their trips with us. So, with no further ado, Joyce and Emma.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you today for attending our presentation. And we're going to go through some of the things that we did in the Ecuadorian Amazon and the Galapagos that we've tried to capture in our sketchbooks. So I'll start first. We're going to be taking turns. And This is an overview of our trip. I'll start by giving you some of the things that we did. As you can see from this slide, we did this trip in late April to mid-May, and this is a really ideal time to travel to this part of the world. And we did this tour with Overseas Adventure Tours, or OATS. And this organization, or this tour group, specializes in small tours with really excellent guides. And so there were only 14 travelers total in this group. And here you see one of the Quechua young girls. Uh, it's in the Amazon that we visited, and that you'll see in a video that we have that we'll show later on. And this is a sketch that Emma made of a garden that we saw in the Papalacta hot springs that we'll tell you more about later on. So this is an overview of our itinerary. You know, we started all the way up from LAX. We flew down to Panama City, changed planes, flew down to Quito, which is the capital city of Ecuador, very high up in the Andes. And then from Quito, we went off to the Amazon to another flight to Coca, and then took a motorized canoe on a Napo River. And then from there, back to Quito, and then off to the Galapagos, to Baltras Island. And in the Galapagos, we visited 4 of the 13 main islands that are out there. So that's the overview of our entire trip. Ecuador is divided to 4 major regions. The Galapagos is on the western side. There's a coastal region, the Andes, where Quito is located, and then the Amazon. And we got to see 3 out of these 4. So we were in the Andes, and to the Amazon, and then to the Galapagos. And of course, Ecuador gets its name because the equator passes right through it. And Quito is not very far from where the equator passes through the whole country. So this is a summary of some of our experiences in Quito, where we visited for a couple of days before we took off for the Amazon.
Oh,
Somebody, I heard some background noise. The city is very high altitude, 9,300 feet. So we brought Dimax pills, and we took like half a pill a day to fend off altitude sickness and kept hydrated. And it worked pretty well, I thought. I didn't have any bad experiences. The water here is not safe to drink anywhere, even in the fancy hotels. So we had to use bottled water throughout the trip. And toilet paper had to be disposed, even in the fanciest hotels, in a trash and not into the toilet. So that took a little bit of getting used to. But Quito is a really clean city and very convenient to get around. We also had several opportunities to sample the traditional cuisine of Ecuador and discovered that they drink a lot of hot soups at all their meals, even though this is a pretty warm equatorial country. And they use very hot, well, it can be variable, but a hot sauce condiment to spike up a lot of their meals. So this is a view from our hotel window of Quito that we were able to see. And we took a tour of the old city of Quito, which is a historic region. But here you can see, this is from our bus ride, that Quito sprawls across what are ridges of a volcano. And the base of this, down deep here, is the river Gualamba,
close.
You know, I'm going to have a hard time. So Emma, step in with your
No, I
Spanish.
have a hard time too, you know.
Okay. Anyway, it's a mouthful. It's a river that cuts through this whole area, and it's very mountainous. And for me, you know, I was born in Hawaii and I grew up in Hawaii, which is also a volcanic area. It was interesting to compare the terrain here and in the Galapagos, which is also volcanic, compared to what I grew up with, where sheer walls of the caldera of the volcanoes that produced Hawaii are there. And in Hawaii, the volcanoes, even though I think they're older than these because they're no longer alive, seem to be I don't know, very sheer cliffs compared to these. These are all rounded, as if they were more um, eroded than they are in Hawaii. So we took a tour of Old Quito, which is one of the, I think it's like a second World Heritage Site. And so it's been on the radar for tourists for some time. This is the impressive neo-Gothic Basilica of the National Vow, which is still under construction. It was started in 1892 and it's still not being done. In fact, the local legend says that when it is completed, the end of the world will occur. So I think this is job security, so you never get the building done. And the four walls of the basilica represent the four regions of Ecuador that I presented to you earlier. And this particular wall represented the Galapagos region. And you can see these are all gargoyles. And so this is my sketch of some of the gargoyles that I saw on the side of the walls. So they represented the birds of Ecuador, I mean, of the Galapagos. This is a booby and this is a frigate bird. So we're going to intersperse our presentation with some of our sketchbooks slides. So inside this beautiful basilica, it's just really gorgeous stained glass. If you look at this region a little closer, you'll see that the glasses depicts, the stained glass depicts some of the orchids of Ecuador. And you'll also see that some of these stained glass windows are not there. And in our part of our tour, we could see that some of the workers were working on some of the stained glass and restoring parts of the stained glass. Here's a panoramic view of Quito, and I think this is looking at the old Quito area. This is a mid-level of the basilica, and we're looking out. And this is taking a panoramic shot with, I think Emma did this on her cell phone. So, okay, I'm passing this on to Emma.
So to get that shot, we had to get into a tiny little elevator and all scrunch up and wonder if it would continue up. And so that was fun. But these are the sketches of how we both perceived it, of looking at the Madonna of Quito. And it sits up over on a hill. And all different places in the old Quito, we could see the Madonna. Okay. This is a big independent square, the Madonna of Quito on the hill. It's where they have, on the right is the monks in a monastery there where they learn to brew beer. And it's also the plaza where a lot of Native Americans engage in bartering goods, and sometimes political protest takes place here.
This is a monastery of San Francisco off to the right.
Yeah, so that monastery there, this is the inside, their courtyard, which is green and beautiful. The palm trees are Ecuadorian palm trees, and they had some cages with some native birds in them. And it was nice to kind of rest after tromping through the city. And this is our crew here. There's Diego, the one there is our leader, very bright man who seems to know a lot about many, many things. Joyce did a sketch there of the part of the monastery. She did that while we were sitting and relaxing. Also, while we were there, Diego has many friends who are entrepreneurs, and one of them was Fabian Davila, and he self-published a book called Galapagos Along the Path. He spent years and years photographing animals on the Galapagos Islands. And oops, I lost there. Wait. And like I purchased a book and my grandkids love to look through all the pictures. They're much better than what I could look at. And in the group, we were fortunate. There were 4 couples there who had all worked for the Kimberly-Clark Corporation. And they've worked all over the world. And one of the places was in Fullerton. So it was fun talking about Fullerton. And part of that made it a very cohesive group. They were very generous, became friends with everybody in the group. So it was one of the tours where there was no outsiders. Everybody was included and everybody watched out for everybody. So I really enjoyed that of our tour. Diego liked to talk to the different vendors, and here he's engages conversation with this lady here. 40% of the Quito's economy depends on these vendors. If you look in the drawing that Joyce drew, you can see her, she's filling a bag of limes, 50 limes for $1, US dollars. Many of the vendors, they sell products for $1. So as they're driving around, the people can pick up odds and ends that they need. But it's amazing how far your dollar goes in this country.
And they use US currency. That made it very convenient for us.
Yes, yes. Okay, this is the entry to the Cafe Negra Mala. And it's, the name I thought was brown coffee, but Joyce reminded me it's after a record that's called Bad Black Woman. And that's the name of the cafe. And you walk in there and there's a real small courtyard. And then we went up some stairs and we're in this home of a family, and that's their restaurant. And we weren't really bothered by vendors, but that lady there, I bought quite a few scarves, and so did Joyce. They're inexpensive and beautiful scarves. So our meal, this restaurant's famous for the empanada appetizers, and all the dishes have condiments. So those condiments, one would be spicy and one not quite so spicy. The main dish was white corn that looked like hominy, tasty, roast pork and plantain, avocado, mashed potatoes, and hot sauce. They ate very balanced foods. Some we're not familiar with, but it was all delicious that we ate there. This is in her home. Vicky, I think was her name, and these long tables, and they served all this food from a little tiny kitchen. Diego translated for the host, Vicky, as she explained each dish that came in front of us, what we were consuming. Joyce, you want to take over?
Okay, thanks, Emma. Okay, so one of the things we did do, and this is typical of the OAT type trip, is that we visited a school that they supported. And the Sinamuni School for Special Needs Children and Young Adults had a performance for us. And let's hope that this works. I just want to stop it. This older gentleman here is a headmaster for the school, and he's a musician, and he, organized all these students and taught them how to play all these various instruments and sing.
Some of them were blind. A couple of them were blind, playing away.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great. And so this is something that Overseas Adventure Tours and Grand Circle Tour, of which OATS is part of, they support many schools in the countries that they have tours. And so we also did some shopping here to kind of help support this.
We supported the country very well, Joyce.
In fact, this group had the privilege of being selected to represent Ecuador and play for Pope Francis when he visited Ecuador in 2015. So they make a big deal out of this experience. So we had a good time here. We danced with the students afterwards too.
It was fun.
Yeah. So we then visited this Intinan Solar Museum. I call it a fake equator museum because it had some kind of hokey things that went on there. But here's Emma at the entrance, and a diorama of the lives of the indigenous cultures there. So I'm trying to balance a raw egg on the head of a nail. I didn't succeed, but another person in our group actually did it. So some of the things that they did at this museum that made me think it was kind of hokey was, you know, the Coriolis effect, where water rotates counterclockwise north of the equator and then clockwise south of the equator and straight down when it's right at the equator. So they had the sink, they put water through it, they got one side of the equator, another side of the equator, and in the middle to show that this effect really works. We also stopped on that same day to visit this young couple who had a startup company called Agave Spirit. And what they were trying to do was to sort of preserve the traditional way that the natives collected the liqueur from agave to make mezcal and other kinds of products from the agave plant. And again, these were friends of Diego, and this young man's name was Diego, and his wife Andrea was an artist. So one of the things we brought home, at least I did, was this vegetarian ceviche, which we really enjoyed. It's made with these chacha beans, and it's very refreshing. And you can see here, popcorn is used a lot as a condiment. It was found in soups, and it was eaten here along with the ceviche. So this method of harvesting the liqueur of the agave plant doesn't kill the plant. They make a hole down in the center and then just let the fluids seep in, and then they scoop out the fluids. It takes a lot longer, whereas the current way of, the industrial way of doing it is to chop the whole plant down and grow the plant again. So they were trying to preserve the traditional culture and be more eco-friendly.
Yeah, they
In fact,
also had the locals do the harvesting that way, which I
yeah,
thought, so other people are getting money, making a living.
right, right. So this is a laboratory where they did the distilling of mezcal liquor, you know, from the agave. And for some reason, I got to do a lot of stuff. And I guess Emma says I never stepped away fast enough.
Everybody else did. She stood still.
Uh-oh, did I not turn on? Can you hear?
Not very well, no.
Maybe that's probably better.
No, we can't hear it.
Okay. But that's all right. What was supposed to happen was I was supposed to put my hand on this rock, and he was playing this very large horn that you see. Um, it has very low tones, and he said, "This is the sound of the universe." And I was supposed to get some kind of feeling from that rock. What happened was I got goosebumps more from the sound than anything else, and so they were all laughing. I hope this doesn't happen to the other sounds. And this is our group photo. This is some of the artwork of Andrea that she had depicting some of the people from their village who were harvesting the mezcal liqueur. We also stopped at a market featuring some of the local produce. It's a huge market, and this little girl is 14 years old and spoke impeccable English. And her mother was also a sample. You know, Diego got samples of all these things, and so we got to sample quite a number of the fruits that they grow locally in Ecuador. And the other thing we discovered, this is another vendor that was selling some of the cut flowers, that Ecuador is really famous for cut flowers. I didn't know that. And it turns out this area in Ecuador, because they're high up in the Andes, they have a lot of sunlight, cool nights, and because they're near the equator, they get a lot of warm weather. And so this is really essential for growing a lot of different kinds of flowers. But the roses here are world famous. Diego told us that the Russians especially favored Ecuadorian roses because they like the roses with really long stems. So these roses had like 3 feet long stems that were straight. And think this is occurring because the sun is right up above them and the plants grow straight up to the sun. And so this is one of the advantages of being in the equator and growing flowers.
Well, that's become their one of their major exports.
Right.
They have planes just designed for that. And when you fly over, you just see beautiful colors of all the different
Fields.
varieties.
Right.
Fields and fields, yeah.
And I learned that this has been a relatively new industry in Ecuador. It only started in the 1990s. And Ecuador is now the third exporter of cut flowers following Holland and Colombia in the world. And of course, in the afternoon, Emma and I took a taxi and we went to this suggested marketplace where there are all kinds of textile goods and all kinds of Ecuadorian products that we shopped at. And you can see we got loaded down. These are 2 bags of mine. So
How many
now,
extra suitcases did you have?
yeah, lucky you. Lucky to have Emma to help me carry some of the things back home.
Yeah.
So Emma's now going to take over as we leave Quito, and we had to pack light for our trip to the Amazon. So Emma?
Yeah, we were told to only take what was necessity and nothing extra. So one small suitcase. So from Quito, we hopped on a small plane and flew across over to Francisco de Orellana Airport. And there we took a bus down to the port, and then we hopped on a panga and went to the Napo Cultural Center Lodge. And this is where the bus dropped us off, and we're waiting for our, I call them pangas, but they're motorized, I forget the name. So this is like their highway. Instead of having paved roads, they use the river, particularly Napo River. So we were relaxing there and watching all the boats. And that's a good sketch, Joyce, there. So while we're waiting, Noah Friedman Rudoskovi, a professional photographer and videographer, came by, and his job was to videotape us of our Amazon experiences for oats. We had volunteered to do that. That was Joyce's idea, I might mention. Neutral, I guess. It was, at first I was nervous about it, but he was so nice and non-evasive. He was there with us. He became part of the group, and you got where you didn't even really notice him. But we did get some teasing about being movie stars on occasion by the group. So views along the Napo River on the way to Napo Cultural Center was, the water to me seemed gray or brownish depending where we were, but the sides were just solid, packed with thick green brush and trees where you really couldn't see through it. This is what I was drawing as we're going, just putting all the different textured leaves and trees and stuff along the way. The only way in it was a break was if there was a village or some kind of oil production going on. So we arrived here. This is the canoe we came in to the community and the Napo River Cultural Center. This community is an indigenous group within the Yasumi National Park. And they had made a decision to use the ecotourism to preserve their cultural and lands, which meant with the support of different organizations, including OATS, they have a doctor there, a nurse, and a dentist, which is very unusual in the villages. Usually there's really no medical care. When we walked up the trail, this is the where the kitchen is, the main lodge, and Diego's talking to us, and then the manager talked about what was going on and how things were going to be set up. We're getting our orientation here. One of the things we got was a water bottle, and we got big high boots and made sure they were our size. we were encouraged to bring some kind of support for the boots, because whenever you were out, you wore them. Sometimes it was slippery, mucky, and you know how when you have boots, sometimes you have a person take off your boots for you. Well, you don't really want to even touch them, these boots. So Diego was showing us how to get them off with this little thing you stepped on and held the heel and you could slip out of them. Sometimes Joyce had some difficulties.
Vice versa.
Yes. And so here's where we were laughing at each other. Each time we went out and we'd come back, they would greet us with a refreshing drink and some kind of an appetizer. This was a OLLI-CSUF, well, that's destroyed that word, tea that's made from a tree in Amazon. It was very tasty and refreshing. This is me standing here on the pathway to get to our cabin.
And know your big water bottle.
Yes, I had a large water bottle, and next time I'll bring a smaller one because I got tired of holding on to it. Look how clean this floor is. This is where we had all of our meals in the Amazon, and Diego gave us a lesson how to get in and out of a hammock safely. That was entertaining watching someone do it after he demonstrated. Our cabin, you stepped up, and this was the outside entrance of the cabin where we take off our boots. There's a hammock that we could have set up, and you can look inside and see where the beds are. And when you go inside, we had these nice beds, mosquito netting that we used at night, but we didn't seem to need it. There was no AC, but the ceiling fan made it comfortable most of the time. The thing about it was the humidity was so high that everything that you put out there would get wet. And this is the view of the yard here. Lots of orchids, flowers, all sorts of growth there, just beautifully green. Joyce, you want to take over?
Okay, thanks, Emma. This is our local guide, Adelmo. He's a member of the Quechua Anagu tribe that's indigenous to this area. And he really was able to spot and hear birds, etc., that we never had an idea of how he did it. Anyway, just really uncanny. As Emma had pointed out, this tribe made the decision to support ecotourism because it brought them a ways and means to preserve their culture for tourists to come here and to see how they actually survived in this environment. This is a drawing Emma made. This is our usual jungle gear, official clothing that we wore out. Hat, sunglasses, a buff, which is sort of like a scarf, a tubular scarf that you could put over your head. And actually you'll see that when we get to the Galapagos, all our panga drivers were wearing them. Some kind of long sleeve shirt, insect repellent, camera, of course, long pants and boots, and walking sticks. So we took a night walk in the jungle and we saw all kinds of critters, mostly insects and spiders and frogs. But I wanted to point out, this is a kapok tree that the tribe members consider sacred, and it has these huge buttress-type roots that our guide Adelmo actually pounded to give us an idea of how communication used to occur. So this is a video that was made by Oates, and we're going to run it because it gives you a better flavor of our experience in the Amazon than if we went slide by slide. So my name is Joyce Ono. I'm from Fullerton, California. I'm a scientist, so you're more observant, I think. People kind of accuse me of being a nerd, you know, because I'm the kind that will look at scum in the water and trying to see if there's anything in there that looks interesting. I have a doctorate in zoology for an invertebrate neurobiologist.
So that's a tree frog?
It is a tree frog.
Oh, they make that loud noise at night, don't they? Me llamo Emma. Emma, sí. Soy de California, near Disneyland. I love to be in a different environment and meet people and learn about them. I have 10 grandkids and I like to be around little ones. They were there and they were interacting and playing with balloons and doing the hokey pokey, and that kind of stuff is fun for me. ¿Cómo se llamas? Emma.
We met because we were in the watercolor class. It's an Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. It's for, retired or semi-retired adults, and they're usually associated with the university.
2 years before I retired, I started a list of stuff I wanted to do when I was done.
We became friends, and Emma went with me to Utah, where we spent about 2 weeks. We roomed together and we lived together and do art. It's sticking out of that branch? What color is it? You're really beautiful, Watson. I guess I do things a lot differently, but she's so laid back. I needed that.
She's very bright. She knows a lot. She's a good balance for me because I get silly.
He's still sitting on the trunk of the tree.
It looks like it goes to a particular... Oh, insects. We both have good humor that we can interact and tease each other, etc. whenever. So, yeah, we always have a good time and have fun. And it's nice to have a friend like that, in our late age.
Oh, violacious.
Violations. Oh. Violations.
Violations.
Violations. Sorry.
It's close.
Tonight I'll go copy it.
It'd be hard for me to get those values there, the dark and the... Yeah. She's there if I need her, and just a good person to be around. Another tree.
Kind of like suction cups. I'm in 7th Heaven here. Poor Diego, I've been asking him all kinds of questions. He's an excellent guide. I was happy that he called me at home before the trip to ask if I had any questions, concerns, and I did, but he assuaged all of them.
I can see movement.
The branches.
Oh, there it is, there it is.
Media.
Ooh, how
Red
beautiful,
fluorescence.
yeah.
Bromeliad.
I love his knowledge of birds and his ability to sight birds and animals.
I felt really privileged yesterday to be able to sit next to him, like my private tour here with him answering all my questions.
They have got the roots around the tree trunk, used to get attached to the plant, but not sucking nutrients from the plant. So that one it's not parasitic.
He has this genuine love of what he's doing.
Yes, mostly the back.
Yeah.
Like this, what we can see.
Very knowledgeable of what we're seeing, having his little book to show us what it should look like.
We have otters. Yes, we have capybara, anaconda. We're going to see a black caiman to the right end of the log, and then it's like 1 foot lower. It's on the surface. You can just see it's the top of its head.
Yeah, it's huge. I was thinking of something
Tomamos
small.
turnos.
It's amazing he saw it. It's
9
so
foot long.
camouflaged.
He's a gentle spirit and shares things when it's appropriate.
Sylvia, yes, Sylvia and Pancho.
Wonderful.
And then you put all the...
They have, you know, the back side or the belly side. You mean, you gotta cut the belly side.
Will you be eating it?
I'll try. Out of my comfort zone, but. Today's experience of visiting with family that's represent an indigenous group of people here and seeing how they live, and they have a very positive outlook. Even though they're without all the comforts that we take for granted. Whoa! Whoa! I got a long one! No internet, no real electricity there. They're doing fine. And so that, I think, right now has been the highlight for me for this trip.
They just harvest what they need for the day, so they don't store it. So that way it stays fresh, it's underground.
They're trying to preserve their culture by having the elders show them how to do these things.
Different. Look at his guts hanging out there. Oh, he's fat. So, Diego.
No, I'm going to eat the tail first. It's kind of tough. The skin is really tough. This is the outer exoskeleton. No.
No, I am watching you eat that.
I'm trying to figure out what it tastes like.
Yeah,
They're really good.
good. I'm glad you like it.
Mmm.
Go get some more. And eat over
You know
there.
why? The fat is really, you know how fat is
Yeah.
when it's salt? It's good.
So Sylvia said what we harvested, those few roots, is what we call here being cooked and mashed. So the saliva caused the fermentation of the manio. It was the chewed manio chicha.
With this kind of environment where there's so much to see and do, having a small group, everybody can hear and see and try out things is really excellent. Oh, wow! So, wait, this way? I made a joke out of it. Everybody's rooting for me. Did it come out at all?
You need more grub.
For me, biologist at heart, I haven't felt like I was impeded from doing anything. When I wanted to go learn about something, I could, even though it's something that's so weird.
That's all right. That's all right. That's what you love. So, yeah, well, it doesn't bother me.
You always tease me about
I
it.
do tease you, but yeah, it doesn't bother me.
You know, it's not as jungly as I thought it would be.
I was nervous about it.
Yeah, me too.
The world is huge, and I don't want to be in this little bubble. And I want to see and feel. And in America, we're so fortunate. We don't have all these other things, and I want to see and experience.
So this was a video that was a promotional that they recorded, but I think we were fortunate in being able to experience it and capture it. So we're going to go quickly through some of these slides of some of the things that we weren't captured in there. One of the first things we did that day, on the first day, was to go out in a motorized canoe, and we're supposed to see a salt lick here. Wherever the earth had been, there was like a landslide, salt was leached out into the soil, and birds would flock here. And this is what we were supposed to have seen. Apparently the salt neutralizes some of the toxins that are consumed by the birds, by the fruits and other kinds of plants that produce defensive toxins. So, but on the day that we were there, Adelmo spotted an anaconda in a nearby tree, and that's why we probably didn't see any of the birds. So Emma and I just kind of drew, here's my anaconda up on this tree, here's Emma's anaconda on her tree. So none of the birds showed up. However, we did see other kinds of spectacular things. These are the Hoatzin, Hoatzin, called stinky turkeys by the natives, because their flesh smells and they're not eaten. But these are very ancient birds. The nestlings have claws at their wings, and so they can actually, if they fall out of the nest, which is usually hanging over the water, they can actually climb up the sides of the banks, and they can also swim as well. So it was really an interesting bird. And the juveniles, the blue around their eyes get darker as they grow older. They're kind of a weird looking, but really beautiful birds. So here are some sketches that I made of our experiences that you saw in the video, of, playing with the children in the village, and my pulling up this manioc root. Emma was behind me taking a video, waiting for me to fall on my butt.
Yeah,
it never happened, thank you.
Good view.
And this is our meal that we had there. It was consisted of a river catfish with chopped hearts of palms, plantains, lime, and some of the mashed manioc that they had. And we also had this white cacao. Here's the whole big nut. And inside of it were all of these seeds that they roasted. It was really delicious. It's something that, in some ways, if they can make a commercial product, I think it would sell really well. And of course, the beetle grubs. These are like rhinoceros beetle grubs that we had. And despite what Emma looked like, it actually tasted pretty good. Okay, Emma, your turn.
I will say that food was very good. I mean, it was cooked over the fire and stuff, but not the grubs. I wasn't into grubs. When we climbed up on top of the observation thing, you could just see this whole blanket of greenery. It's kind of like going down the river on the side. You just see this whole blanket. Adalmo on the first night of hike, he pounded on the root and talked about how this is a sacred tree and how that noise goes out through the jungle and it communicates to other tribes. Well, I was standing on the other side of that big tree, just touching one of the roots, and you could feel that vibration. And it just kind of struck me amazing how that worked. And when we were up on the top of that canopy, I said, I want a picture of you. And he rushed over and grabbed the tree, because that's really an important thing to him. So I really liked that picture of him. He was an amazing man, so talented with being able to hear something, find it, and then let us see it in the little tiny telescope. This is the whole crew. The children, they didn't have school that day, but because we were there, a bunch of them came to the school. And so, and this lady on the far right, she's one of the leaders there who really helped this village communicate to others, to generate the money or get groups to fund them, donate money, because they now have that amazing doctor and dental care. And the children, the little ones, go to school there, and then when they get a little older, they take their bus, the canoe, they go out to the side and get on the canoe and go to a bigger village for their higher education. and we got to do the dance with them. And on the background, they have some of the wares. What amazed me is these handmade goods, there's no plastic there. It's all the stuff that they have, leaves, seeds, reeds for weaving. They really make use of their natural products there. So it was suggested by Oates that we bring some gifts. I brought some books and things. Joyce brought some soprano recorders, and this little girl got one, and she was trying to play it. And so Joyce took some time and showed her, and she was so happy making all this noise and trying to play it. And there's the picture that Joyce drew of Diego when he was becoming a brave warrior, face painted by Adelmo. We bid farewell. We were sad to go, but also happy to head home. When we got on the boat, we came back to the Coca and we went through a market, and people are selling all these different fruits and vegetables. And then we went over to, oops, the wrong way. Diego went up and talked to this lady here who explained all of the different medicinal extracts or different things you could buy. Like I picked up some that was supposed to help my hair not be so dry. It's stuff for aches and pains. And then Diego bought us some fish, fried fish, and we were all hungry and ate the fish. No one seemed to take the grubs though. And Joyce, you can start now.
Okay, so we fly back to Coca in this propeller type plane. I'm not Coca, to Quito from Coca. And the next day we had a nice respite from roughing it in the so-called jungles here. So from Quito, we took a bus ride, a torturous one, all through the mountains to this hot springs of Papalacta. Papalacta is 10,800 feet high, so it's over 1,000 feet higher than we were at Quito. But by that time, I guess we had been accustomed to the high altitude and it didn't bother us. So the others, it was our only really rainy day when we were in Quito. And so the others took a hike in that pouring rain in high altitude, whereas Emma and I luxuriated in an hour-long massage instead. And this is Emma's version of Papalacta Hot Springs Resort. And I remember having my massage and lying on the table and then hearing the rain pelting the rooftops like that, and then the thunder and lightning, and I thought, we made the right decision.
The same way I felt. It's so good. There were a couple other women that did it too, but most of them did the hike.
Right. So this is my rendition of the resort, and we had a really wonderful lunch of this trout that was caught in that resort area, and some fruit juices. I think this is a soursop juice with some kind of berry that we had all kinds of different tropical fruits served at almost every meal. And we also had a chance to soak in these hot thermal baths. And I've been in hot baths before in Japan, especially in hot springs, and there the water is way hotter and also very sulfurous smelling, so you kind of smell really kind of stinky in all your clothes. Here, this didn't happen, even though this was a thermal hot springs. And that night, back in Quito, we visited the Mindale Museum that specializes in Ecuadorian ethno-historical crafts. We had the whole museum to ourselves with a guide for that evening, and they served us this really special, very elegant meal, a multi-course meal of some of the fairly gourmet versions of some of the traditional food stuff that they serve in Ecuador. This building also had a hole that went through all the various floors, and I guess the sun, when it's right over that hole, just illuminates the entire museum through that hole. So here are some of the scenes and sounds from the Mendeley Museum. And again, I didn't step back fast enough, so I got. I was supposed to be the percussionist. So our guide, this guy was playing a wooden xylophone in that. So here are some of the views that we had in the museum. There was a lot of the ethnic clothing, probably festival clothing that were scattered around the museum, and some artifacts, as well as some musical instruments that were on exhibit in this museum. So Emma, now it's your turn again.
Yes. So the next morning, we had to pack again, bare minimum. I mean, bare minimum, to get on the smaller plane and to go to the Galapagos. And so we went to the Seymour Airport. The flight from Quito lands at Seymour Airport on the island of Balta. It's very flat, desert-like, as you can see, with all the lava in there. But I'll talk about the airport a little in the next slide. It just opened in 2012. During World War II, the US were stationed there, and you can still see the remnants of their old buildings there. The airport was designed where they don't use air conditioning. They've got big fans in the ceiling and around, and then they have the louvres that open and close where those squares are. That's representing the louvres. So it was very comfortable, not hot and muggy in there, but when you stepped outside, you could feel the heat. So it was amazing to me that they could accomplish that. So from Balta, we took a ferry to Santa Cruz Island. Santa Cruz is the most populated island. And then we rode in a bus from the north and headed south. And we stopped halfway there to view the tortoises. So we stopped at the central part of the, oh, let me see, I missed there. So we started at Balta, and then we stopped at Manzanillo. Manzanillo means apple ranch, to see the tortoises at, there. And then we headed on to Puerto Ayora, and then to South Plaza Island. So our guide that we picked up, we didn't have Diego, now we have Paola, and she's a biologist. She grew up in on this island. She was a fairly new guide, very, very knowledgeable. She'd been a naturalist guide for the last 5 years. She went to school here, and then when she got older, she went to Ecuador to get a better education. And her father was the first native naturalist guide for the Galapagos, which she was very proud of and following his footsteps.
You went to Quito.
Pardon? Oh, she went to Quito.
Ecuador.
Yeah. And she's got her bachelor's, so and she's moving on to higher education. When we got there, this is where we stopped and got stuff to drink, the restrooms, and eat. And this is a glimpse of the first tortoise, a juvenile, based on the smaller size and the clear grooves on his plates. So that was, so here, this is where we had a good laugh. When you walked around, you found tortoises all over the place, under bushes, in some water. But this guy here, he was trying to mate, and she's underneath here. And he's grunting and groaning, but he's not even close to where he's supposed to be. So that was, we were giggling at that. Oops. So this island's very different from the last island we were on. You can see all of the greenery, and they're growing apples and fruit here. And the animals, the tortoises, can roam freely. All their fences are up high. The bottom of the fence is up high enough so that the tortoise can get underneath. And right now, I'll just share real quick with you, island Espanola just had 15 tortoises put there. They had, for 50 years, they had the eggs, they incubated them, they raised those tortoises, and then just a couple of months ago, they put 15 back on the Espanola Island. So we got back in the bus and we went down to Porto Aurora.
Okay.
And we took this little motorized Zodiac to get to the ship, Karina.
So I'll take over from here.
Yes.
This is a panga, that the Zodiac inflatable panga that was our transport to and from the Karina throughout the trip here. So this is the Karina, our home for the next 5 days. Emma and I had the second deck up on the top here with very steep stairs that went between the floors. We were welcomed by the captain of the Karina, and here's Paola translating for him. And our accommodations in the Karina, this is where we had all our meals and sometimes a class. And this is our cabin, quite spacious for a small ship like this. We slept on these platform beds, really heavy wooden beds. And I'm telling you this because of what happened to us on this trip. We had closets, and the drawers were, you know, down on the bottom of the beds. And this is the door to the bathroom. Everything's very compact, but, you know, efficient. And Vanessa was our room attendant, and she cleaned every day. And again, toilet paper isn't flushed. You put it into a receptacle, bottled water again, brushing your teeth. And because we were on the second deck with a very steep stairway to the main deck, you really needed to hang on to both banisters as you walked up the stairway, especially when the ship was moving. And I found this you really needed to carry like a backpack so your hands were free, because we had to bring bottled water up and down several times in a day to get to our room. So on day one, as Emma pointed out, we started from Baltra Island. We came across by bus, and then we caught our ship here, and then we sailed to another island to the east of Santa Cruz Island. Santa Cruz Island is one of the northernmost island that we visited. So South Plaza Island is our next stop. So I took these little, made these little drawings from a map that I had. I brought a book that I'll share with you later on that had all these maps of where tourists land or visit. And it was good because it gave you an overview of what the island looked like. So this is our first real day on the Karina. We had what they call a dry landing. In other words, we didn't have to take our shoes off and wade in the water. And so we just got onto some rocks. And we first see our first iguana. That's for the Santa Cruz Island, and some other kinds of birds in the sea lion colonies. So again, here are some sketches. These are swallow-tailed gulls that have these red circled eyes, and they hunt at night on the ocean. This happened to be a young, a juvenile of a swallow-tailed gull, and they look really different. And Emma and I both did some postcards of some of the animals that we saw there that we'll tell you a little bit more about mailing them.
Yes, so after lunch, we sailed to Berrien Bay on the Santa Fe Island. So this is where I discovered that I get seasick. So I found out that doing the wristbands didn't work. The people who had the patch behind their ear did much better.
And actually, the ship itself in a dining room, remember they had a bowl full of
Yes.
Dramamine pills?
Yeah, and so I was taking them, and then the ones that I brought from the doctor. Let's see. This was parts of the islands reminded me of Baja. They're similar desert plants, but different. So there was a cactus forest up in the northern part. Then there was, let's see, then there was we saw the Santa Fe Island iguanas, Galapagos sea lions, and lava lizards. So this is a picture of the cactus. See how they're big, like almost like big hands. Very different, but similar to what I see in Baja. And then the iguanas, the land iguanas, they eat all these yellow flowers. And so they say that's why they're yellow. But what was amazing to me is these animals in Galapagos are not afraid of people. They just ignore you. They don't care. You could if you wanted to step over them, but we tried to stay at least 6 feet away from all animals. But sometimes when we went along, it was hard to get around them in the brush. And then this is Joyce's drawing there, and they're kind of ugly, but they're so ugly they're pretty, I think. This is the land iguana eating all those yellow flowers. We'll explain the postcard thing later, but this is a sketch I did of the sea lion. They're so funny. They just climb all over. The pups just want to play, and the adults are barking and complaining that they're crawling all over them, just like little kids, like a little 2- and 3-year-old running around your house. Oops. Then we sail from Santa Fe to Florina Island. The first stop in day 2 is the Punta Cormorant on the island, and our first wet landing. Let's see. Oh, wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to go back?
Flipping wrong. Yeah. I'm on our daily schedule. So every morning, oh, did you want me to talk more about that?
That's okay.
Yeah. Every morning we had a daily schedule that told us what to do, because most of the time I didn't even know where I was. It'd tell us what time we had to get up and breakfast and what we were going to be doing. This picture here, this part of Florina Island has varied terrain. When we landed, we were in the Olivine sand beach. It's made from the volcanic actions. I've got my notes all messed up here. And then we walked down to the lagoon here where we saw the flamingos. And then we walked up on a hillside, up and over, and now we're in the hot, dry stuff, and we get to this powdered sand. This is showing our first wet landing. We wade to the shore carrying our shoes and then try and dry them out. The olivine is produced by volcanoes with a magnum that is rich in magnesium and low in silica. And you can see that in the hands. The challenge of getting our shoes on was kind of fun because your feet are still wet. And it was hot, sunny, and very humid. And on this trip, we really needed our hiking sticks because it was very rocky. When we got down to an area, we walked around and got to the lagoon, we saw the flamingos, and it was amazing. You could see their reflections in the water. This is a juvenile. See, it's not very pink. They tend to be grayish when they're babies. And lots of birds are hanging around. The flamingos filter the water and sand for food. They use the lower beak, is larger than the upper, and it contains rows of horny plates to filter. And I think you already know that they get their pink from eating the shrimp. And the juveniles are born gray and then turn pink. Now this, we didn't discover till Joyce had it on this slide, right, Joyce?
Yeah.
And we looked, and she blew it up, and then she marked this so I don't forget where the eggs are. But across the lagoon, the flamingos were here, and they have nests there, and there's some eggs here, and here's some little nestlings. So they're reproducing. We hiked to the beach. We went up over a ridge and got to the other side waiting to get picked up. And behind you, all of us standing there are the sea lions were lounging. And they were very noisy that day, just barking away. And we were looking for sea turtles, but we didn't see any then. Joyce?
Okay. So on the same day in the afternoon, one of the things that we found is we did a lot of stuff on this trip. And this is only the afternoon of the second day here. We went from Punta Cormorant on Floriana Island to Champion Island, and we did our first attempt at snorkeling here. So here we just jumped off the pangas right into the water with our gear. And this is my drawing of our experience here. I had a full face mask that allowed you to breathe through your nose and didn't have to breathe through your mouth. Emma was really unhappy with her snorkeling gear and didn't want to get in, but she finally was persuaded to come in the water with Paola helping her along, pointing out all the fishes that we saw. And the sea lions were swimming all around us, nipping at our flippers and stuff. But one of the things that really got to me in this experience is that the seafloor was pretty devoid of a lot of life. It was pretty barren. I saw a couple of brain coral that were dead and some pencil urchins, but that was about it. Usually when you see, this kind of terrain, you think of a lot of seaweed, a lot of snails, feather dust worms, etc. None of that, no anemones, or none of that was there. So it's, I don't know why that was the reason. So here's again, we had another experience from Punta Corona. Here's Champion Island where we were swimming or snorkeling. That evening, we sailed to the post office bay, and Paola, our guide, goes through the accumulated mail that we find there that are addressed to people near where we live, and we picked up their mail. And we also deposited our postcards that we had painted. I had sent it to some of my family members, and Emma did the same without stamps. And so we picked up a couple of that were near our area. I picked up, I think, 3 for Pasadena and Yorba Linda and
Fullerton.
down the beach. And I think Emma got people from Fullerton. So this was because the Galapagos are so isolated and only 3 of the islands are populated that this is the way the sailors would leave messages or letters that others would pick up on their and deposit or deliver to people when they got home to their destinations. So this was our experience. This is day 3, the evening. So here's Floriana Island. We're going to sail to Espanola Island in the evening. And it was the roughest I've ever been in a ship. It was so rough that, before I gone in there, that wooden bed we were sleeping on, the heavy wooden bed, the next morning we found that the beds had moved 12 inches, a foot. Because of all the tossing and turning. And the couple next door to us, the towel rack shook loose from the wall and came crashing down. And I made the mistake of trying to take a shower that night. And you try taking a shower, you have to do it with one hand, holding on to some kind of railing or the wall. And just, it was kind of a comedy now that I think about it. It wasn't then, because you kind of got battered all over the place. And then try dressing with only one hand, okay? It was not so easy to do. So we didn't sleep that well that night, and the next day was our toughest hike. And so I know Ollie is planning a possible trip to the Galapagos, but take heed to some of the things that we're telling you about. And I remember Shar Oliver telling me, she did it when she was 80. She said, Joyce, you better do it before you got to be 80. And so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to make a trip now. So this was another dry landing, but it was when the sea was very rough. We had to time our landing between sets of waves because they came crashing over this area that we were landing. So we did a dry landing here, and then we walked on the trail, all rocky, and came to a blowhole area, and then this whole area down the middle of the island is where the waved albatrosses were nesting, and this is where it was well known for.
And the mosquitoes.
Yeah, and this is the first time that we encountered mosquitoes and bugs, so we had to stop and apply some repellent. But this is the kind of terrain that we were walking on, very steep, very rocky, and you really needed walking sticks. We came across some marine iguanas here in red. We'll get more of them. But there are a couple of carcasses of dead iguanas here. It turned out that in the last El Nino, 85% of the marine iguana on this island died out. And usually when you have this kind of die-off, it produces what they call a bottleneck effect on the genetic diversity of the remaining population. So it's not good for the survival of the species. So here are some of the pictures of the marine iguanas on Espanola Island. The males are red during the mating season, and we were there. But you can see they blend in pretty well with the rocks otherwise. And there are a lot of them. We did come across an unusual green juvenile iguana. But the main attraction here were these waved albatrosses. And I was lucky enough to see a hood constrictor snake, hood racer snake. And later on, just a couple of weeks ago, David Attenborough had a nature program that showed these hood racer snakes hunting in packs and herds with all these marine iguana hatchlings trying to make it to the sea. And it's quite a gruesome sight because they're all the snakes in the Galapagos are constrictors, which tells you what came across. So here's a video of our waved albatross, and I call it the fickle male effect. Let's see if I can get it to work. We saw a lot of birds on this trip, and here are a fast go through of many of them. Blue-footed, couple of boobies. We only saw the Nazca booby and the blue-footed booby. Apparently there's a red booby as well, red-footed booby. Some oyster catchers, brown pelicans, and a stilt, a Galapagos dove, and the great frigate bird with their red gullet, and a couple of herons, a yellow-crowned night heron, blue heron, lava herons, and also Sally Lightfoot crabs. These are the most commonly seen, and these are all the same species, even though they're darkly colored when they're young and then brightly colored when they're older. And the name Sally Lightfoot, they don't quite know what the origin is, but I looked it up last night. It's because they're very light on their foot. They can move really, really quickly. And just to give you a view of their size relationship, they're quite large. They can be up to about half a pound. And we saw a lot of sea lions tossing them around in play. They weren't eating them, they're just tossing them around. So from there, we sailed, where are we? We take our snorkeling gear and leave them on the beach while we do hiking. So we sail to Gardner Bay from here to this area, a wet landing on a white sandy beach. Oh, I'm still here. So, we did a wet landing on this very long white sandy beach, and we're supposed to then snorkel from the shore to this Daniel Rock, and I never made it. Emma declined to go. She was smart. She got to get a nice tour, but my inflatable vest failed, and I spent too much time, and I got separated from the rest, so I flagged the Panga driver to come pick me up. So I sat in the Panga by myself. Emma was on a nice tour elsewhere.
We're having a tour, going through caves, seeing fish, and all sorts of nice things. Yes.
So there are a lot of sea lions on this white sandy beach, and just a short little, it tells you how noisy. Our guide was trying to talk over this. And this is a part of the rocky outcroppings on this beach. And I went and explored the rocks and the tide pools here. And again, you know, there was hardly any life there. There were no anemones or seaweed or anything there. So I was very disappointed in the lack of diversity in the marine life in this area. A lot of crabs, though. Okay, so Emma's turn.
Yes, this is day 4. It's a relaxed one on San
Yeah.
Cristobal Island. We sailed to the capital city, to Puerto Baqueiro
Moreno.
something like that.
Yeah. This is actually,
overview.
this is a summary of all the islands we have visited so far. We started off with Santa Cruz and then to Santa Fe and then Floriana and then Espanola and now to San Cristobal.
Now we're going to the capital.
Yeah.
We visited the interpretive center to learn about the history of Galapagos. We were in civilization for a few hours. We got to shop and dine. I got to call the United States and talk to family. And then we sailed to the north of the coast of San Cristobal and do a wet landing to explore. And some people went snorkeling. Joyce and I chose to opt out and stay on the ship and enjoy some comfort and relaxation. So this museum, this National Park Interpretive Center, was really amazing. It's open air, lots of plants around, greenery, and it's broken down in 4 sections where it talks about the founding of the islands, the settlement, the exploitation that's still taking place, and the ecotourism. So it's very informative. As I'm sitting and relaxing, I got out my sketchbook and I drew the cafe that was across the street, and a lot of scooters around. There are cars, limited cars, because you really don't have far to go. When we came up to the city, this beautiful view there, and Joyce did a really good rendition of the cafe, of sitting there and relaxing. And here we're hanging out, drinking some iced tea or soda, and then Joyce did the picture of the Casablanca Hotel. And these are just some quick sketches that I did on the Plaza Sur Island off of Santa Cruz. The one thing, this little thing that's up and down here sticking up is from the satellites can see and spot this. It's got some kind of message it sends back. So it was a marking point for the islands. And then this is Santa Fe Island. Sierra Brujo, Witches Hill. We stayed on the upper deck, the very top deck here, where you could relax, be in the shade. It was fun watching the frigate birds flying around over us. And you can see where everybody hangs out their laundry, mainly their wetsuits and bathing suits. This is a picture of the island. When sunset came, everybody was back on the ship. We went around these islands, unusual islands off the north coast of San Cristobal. And then we got to see how to make the Caperina cocktail. And this is where the frigate birds nest, on these rocks. They don't do it too many places. So Carlos shows how to make the drink, and then him and Paola do a little dance. Move. Tried to get some volunteers, but Joyce wouldn't dance, so nobody else danced. You're
Okay,
on,
so
Joyce.
this is our last full day on the Galapagos. And so our Carina, so been to all these islands, we're now here. We sailed back to Santa Cruz Island and explore a mangrove swamp, which is a hatchery for a lot of the juveniles of many marine fishes and turtles. And so we saw quite a number of animals here in the water around the mangroves. I think a lot of different rays, different kinds of sharks, hammerheads, and white-tipped and black-tipped leopard sharks, and green turtles.
What
So
was fun was the first, when we went there, somebody came out of the mangroves and they hadn't seen anything.
Right. So we lucked out. So these are some of the, you could see, even with my little point and shoot camera, we're able to see these things. And when we got back to the ship, Vanessa showed us how to fold some of these towels. You know, I think every cruise has this component to it.
Yeah. Uh,
And we also got a tour of the ship's working quarters. This is their galley, where all these wonderful meals were done, very efficient. And Diego, another Diego, we had 3 Diegos on this trip, Emma.
yeah.
He was my favorite guide amongst on the ship. He's a ship engineer, and he showed us some of the components of the engine room and all the safety things that they had on board. So this is an example of the breakfast that we had, a lot of fresh fruits and cold cuts and different kinds of juices. We didn't suffer very much for food.
No, it was all very good.
Yeah, and our last night, the crew, this is all the crew that took care of us. Vanessa was the only female on there, and these 2 guys were our, Fernando and it was a Hidalgo, I think, were our panga drivers. I didn't recognize them because when they were on the panga, they were wrapped up with all, you know, to protect themselves from the sun, wrapped up in their Rolo scarves. So we did learn the Ecuadorian toast among friends. You grab your drink, you go arriba up, adante down, el centro in the middle, and adentro to your mouth, and then you shook your booty.
I like shaking the booty. So recommendations for taking this trip. Bring walking sticks. And mine had the straps, which made it easier. So some had walking sticks, but this way, when you have a strap, it just stays with you. High altitude, if you tend to get altitude sickness. Also, we had to take malaria pills. Motion sickness remedies, if you're prone to motion sickness, which that's me also. Get clothes that wick sweat, because both places you're sweating and you want it to be fast drying. Although places it didn't dry, but you want it to fast dry. Good hiking shoes, particularly in the Galapagos with all that rocky surface in different places. A good hat to keep the sun off of you, because there's a lot of sun in the Galapagos. A lightweight water bottle to hike with. Mine was too heavy and it became cumbersome. And Joyce brought these cooling scarves that you wet, and it keeps you cool. And so if I got hot, you could put it on you and cool off. And a lightweight camera with a really good zoom lens. Joyce?
Okay, and what we took for sketchbooking gear, Catherine has asked me that. So for sketchbooking, Emma and I both brought some heavier paper type of sketchbooks, a mechanical pencil because you couldn't really sharpen your pencil very easily, a kneaded eraser because it's very easy on the paper. We had water brushes that had their own supply of water in them, and a small leak-proof palette. Actually, I have some of these things that I think, Emma, you were looking for yours too.
Yeah, I was going to show them the bag that I carried everything in.
Yeah, me too. And I have mine in a little plastic bag.
Yeah.
And your favorite watercolors in a little, this is my little palette. I'll open it up later on when I'm done with these. Some paper towels that were just folded up. These are technical pens called Micron Pigma pens. So they're really good for fine waterproof pens, fine lines, and a plastic bag or some kind of bag to keep all your supplies. So with that, we thank you for joining us. Emma and I are teaching an introduction to sketchbooking class that meets on Mondays, starting next Monday already at 1 p.m.
Yes.
And it meets every other Monday. And we hope that our travel sketchbooks have been an inspiration for some of you to join us.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to that class. Thank you guys. It was wonderful.
Are there